This is your boy Matt. This is Tac0 Admin 1 for 28th of October 2025. It's Tac0 Admin 1 because I've got several instructions which I need to get out today. So, before I get to my instructions, I need to tell a story. So there's a gentleman called General Stanley McChrystal. Okay? Now, he was in charge of all the operations in Afghanistan between 2003 to 2006. Sorry, 2008. Alright? He was a little bit of a cowboy. He was known for being a little bit narcissistic. He had a very, very high opinion of himself. This is pretty normal amongst this kind of people. His department was the Joint Special Operations Command. What I have noticed with Special Forces people is that they have a very high view of themselves. And while many of these people will give their appropriate boots licking to the ideas that we're all in this together and we're all a team, they have egos, right? They have a high opinion of themselves and they do some very strange things. Now, what General McChrystal did is that he had an issue with his boss, who was Obama. But more than just having an issue with his boss, which is fine, good on him for having that, good on him for speaking out against his concerns regarding the operations in Afghanistan. His issue is that when he was in Europe, is that because he thought of himself as a bit of a rock star, he thought of himself as a bit of the center of the universe, and because he was in charge of this big operation in Afghanistan, he thought he was the most important thing in the fucking universe. What he did is that he hired this tour bus, and they went around Europe. A large amount of that was regarding their work, but it was done as if he was in a fucking rock band, and that's what he did with his staff. And he had a Rolling Stone journalist on this fucking tour bus. Okay? And this was a very cringe thing for him to have done. Now, this journalist looked at what was going on, wrote down everything he said, like he wasn't sugarcoating it. General McChrystal wanted everyone to know about his experiences in Afghanistan. He wanted to put it out. Remembering I'm getting these names from secondary sources, it's been a while since I've been able to look all this stuff up properly. And sometimes I do worry that the names which I say to the world have been adjusted to, but regardless, getting back to my point, so General McChrystal, he felt so fucking special. He was known for running around with he had this claw thing, he had this idea, like people who knew him used to be like, yeah man, he thinks he's better than everyone else. And he got this fucking journalist, and he said everything. He let the journalist into his world. The journalist got to know him very personally on this tour bus. He got to know all his staff. And then he was really fucking surprised when when the article from the Rolling Stone journalist included all the information he'd fucking seen. Okay? Really surprised. And then he lost his job. Of course he did. It was a big national embarrassment to the Americans. Now, I have witnessed the same bloody fucking thing with the Australian Signals Directorate, Australian Army, and related services. Okay? I was a part of a veteran artist called Michael Armstrong's community. He played up his disability. He used to do this thing where he would try and portray PTSD using art. So he would have all these veterans and they'd all current serving army members. And he did this thing where he would cover them in molasses because that's what it feels like to have PTSD. There's this trauma that's kind of stuck with you and you can't get away from it. In truth, that's a very unhealthy way to look at it, and I've had to sit down with members at Open Arms, which is our actual veterans counselling service, to explain this guy's causing a lot of fucking problems, because whilst that's a good artistic representation, he then went to the next step, which is to act as a counsellor for members of this community, where he did a terrible fucking job, and he ended up running a cult, because he grew up in a cult and this was his frame of reference. It was very cringe behaviour. Now, I got to be around these people and my head was spinning for a long time, right? At different points I've had to go, because they'll just tell me classified information. I know a shit ton of national secrets, which I really shouldn't know. It got so bad that I sat down with members from Asia to explain, hey, I keep being told all these national secrets. Like, I'm at this gym, there's a security risk. This guy's is doing some bizarre shit, and and they're doing weird things, and I didn't tell them everything because I was still processing everything at the time. Like, they were doing things like making me porn. I was talking to these celebrity podcasters like Jocko Willink, and because this is what Michael would do, is that he would make people feel special, and then they would start becoming part of his community because he was trying to find a way to gain cultural relevance and sell his art. And what he ended up doing is that he began using his relationships with the Signals Directorate, because his background was in cyber warfare in both the Australian Army and the Signals Directorate, to kind of build, to use this to build connections for him so he would maintain cultural relevance and become more famous and be able to sell his art and situate himself as a public figure, as a celebrity in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community and the art community, right? And then they're all very angry afterwards, similar to what the General Stanley McChrystal was with his with this journalist and these other people. When I tell everyone, hey, this is exactly what I've seen, right? I didn't sign an NDA. I don't have an active security clearance. I've literally behaved, if I'm a mole or a spy, and I suppose in a way I kind of have to call myself that at this point, not a mole though. I've been if I'm acting against our national interests, I'm doing a pretty shitty job, seeing as I literally sit down with our fucking counterintelligence service, right? I sit down with our fucking counterintelligence service to explain what's going on, right? If I'm actively seeking them out and actively trying to cooperate with that side of our government, I'd be a really, really shitty spy, hey? A really shitty mole if I'm trying to undermine our security that way, wouldn't I? Right? So, and now that this has happened, what he's then done after all this, and I've tried to explain, hey, can you leave me alone? You're a bit cultish. You're a bit of a creep, Michael. Right? I've had to get these people behave in such a way that all these people's behavior has been able to be shown publicly and come to light. Right? Now, I have a call to action here because I've tried resolving this issue through different means, but the Australian Army and the Australian Signals Directorate, they do not have the same self-awareness or the same clue to themselves than the fucking Americans did when they fired General Stanley McChrystal, okay? They don't seem to have the same awareness as the Americans, where they're like, okay, we've got a loose cannon here. He's acting like a bit of a strange narcissist. We need to remove this guy from command, right? These people, for some reason, we choose to protect our misbehaving members of our intelligence and military apparatus for some reason, and it's doing my head in. So my request is because there are going to be members of this situation who were associated with Army and our Defence Force, I'm going to request that my friends in Navy, because they do not fuck around, primarily my previous divisional officer Damien Hansen, I'd also like Raf as well. If Whitehead is still in, I'd like him to do it, and any of the staff who knew me at the Naval College, who've been watching this situation unfold, to begin bringing this situation up through their chains of command and saying, we've got misbehaving members of our Army and Signals apparatus. I would like our Chief of Navy to begin resolving this problem, okay? Can we bring this up the chain of command through Navy? Because these other parts of our military institution do not seem to have the integrity to keep their misbehaving assets in line, right? This has been a very overt case of corruption, and my head has been spinning for a large amount of this time trying to make sense of what's been going on. But it really just seems to be that General Stanley McChrystal seems to be the best metaphor historically for this kind of situation, where we've had this over-the-top sort of wanting to be a rock star kind of character, right? making other people in the institution, trying to promote them as rock stars as well, because that's what he was doing with his crew when they were going on this fucking tour with this Rolling Stones journalist. Cringest fucking thing ever. Like, people say, hey man, this guy thinks of himself as a rock star. Well, how do you know he thinks of himself as a fucking rock star? Oh, he got a Rolling Stones journalist to come with him. Like, what the fuck? Now, we've had that same fucking situation happen here in Canberra, right? This is very cringe behaviour by the culture of Navy and our military institutions. This kind of showboating does not get tolerated, okay? And I'm a civilian, so I'm allowed to do that, but this fucker can't. And the way that he's been able to latch on to our current serving service members, ex-service members, and our national institutions such as the Signals Directorate to promote him is fucking heinous, right? And we need to begin using our command and control structures, which hopefully work. Some of them have to work somewhere. And I'm going to have a stab through Navy this time, to get this fucker out of our command and control structure. He does not have an active security clearance. He's a civilian, right? These people in the Army and Australian Signals Directorate who have decided to tack onto him and represent his interests, like, they need to be held accountable, right? There's no ifs or buts about it. They have misbehaved. They have gone on the Rolling Stones fucking tour bus with Michael Armstrong here, right? He gave them some cultural relevance. He made them feel like little rock stars and celebrities. And he tried to do this for financial gain and cultural relevance, right? And it's time for him to face the music of that. And it's time for the people who tacked onto him to also take the consequences of that. And hopefully the command and control structure through Navy is going to be able to address this problem. So please, I'm requesting that the people who know me through Navy bring my matter up through their command and control structure, because this situation is fucked. It's still going. It's still ongoing. And the worst thing is that because of the way that these people have this conservative leaning, they kind of all tack onto each other and they start shitting into each other's mouths. So now I worry that Michael has kind of ingratiated himself with the police and other services as well, because he kind of presented himself as a vanguard for those communities. There is already adequate care and representation for these people. You go to fucking Open Arms, okay? Open Arms runs veterans groups. They run small groups. They provide community organisation, and they provide actual evidence-based care. You don't need to go to some quacky fucking ex-cult member guy who's trying to sell his art to get care if you have PTSD. This guy's a problem, right? He's a problem, and he needs, and the people who are associated with him, they're going to have to be separated from him through a command and control structure. Right? And these people need to face significant disciplinary and criminal prosecution. That's Taco Admin 1 for today. Have a good one.